Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Heart of Rural America podcast, the show where we highlight incredible people doing inspiring things in their rural and agricultural communities. I'm your host, Amanda Radke, and it is a pleasure and a joy to share this content each week with you on Wednesdays. I want to thank my listening audience for tuning in each week, subscribing to the show, leaving your reviews, and letting us know how you're enjoying the content. This show wouldn't be possible without you, and for that, I am eternally grateful to you all. Now we're kind of getting in on a full year of podcasting. The first episode came out last summer, 2023, and it's been a lot of fun. And I couldn't do it without the support of some amazing sponsors and partners who I picked up along the way, who understand the mission of the Heart of Rural America podcast and are helping to keep me focused on that mission. And so I want to thank Bid on Beef, CK6 Consulting, CK6 Source, Real Tough Livestock Equipment, Meats by Lynn's, the Lynn's Shop, Lynn's Heritage Angus, Redmond Real Salt, and I especially want to thank the radio stations that have picked me up as well. Dirt Road Radio out of Western South Dakota has been such a strong supporter. And so every Saturday morning, they air the show. That's Dirt Road Radio. You can find it on 103.1 FM KYDT or 1450 AM KBFS. So thank you, Andrea Wood, for streaming me on your radio channels. I also want to thank my show producer and editor, Abby Graves. She does an amazing job of packaging these podcasts every single week, and I just simply could not do it without her. And I preface all that to say I want to get these thank yous out there because I don't say it often enough. And as this show highlights amazing people, I have some amazing people in my circle who believe in me, support me, mentor me, all of those things. And so I'm just incredibly grateful and just humbled by the people who have wrapped themselves around me and supported me on this mission. So today, as we kick off the show, I must say there's no special guest. You're stuck with yours truly. It's just you and me today, which we have not done since this show first began. And those first couple episodes were just me talking about the mission of this show and what we are going to highlight and talk about. And we've had a lot of fun along the way. We've covered a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of topics. You know, when I first had this vision of a podcast, I was going to call it Land and Livestock at first, which I think is still a cool name and someone should totally steal it and use it. But I thought, well, I have a passion for the land and being a steward of the land and natural resources. And I have a passion for livestock and cattle genetics and breeding and nutrition and making these cattle the very best that we can be at Radke Land and Cattle so that we can serve our customers, so we can build a successful business. And so we can fulfill lifelong dreams that Tyler and I have had in this cattle business that we love. And so to me, land and livestock kind of captured it all. And yet it was missing one huge component as I was brainstorming the theme and the overall mission of this show. And it didn't capture the people. And that's why the Heart of Rural America was so fitting, because I'm passionate about this country. I'm passionate about people, conserving family values and communities, of creating new pathways to profitability for individual small businesses and farms and ranches. I'm passionate about Main Street, small town USA, and rural America. And it really all came together perfectly when I realized that while when I'm on the road speaking, I might be talking about agricultural policy one day, or I might be talking about family business and managing large farming operations with multi-generations, might be talking about career development and success for young people as they enter the agricultural world upon graduating high school or college. I might be talking about agricultural literacy in my children's books and trying to teach kids about where their food comes from, one story at a time. And I love all those things. But the real thing that I've realized, the real value that I've discovered and uncovered on the dusty trail as a speaker and doing more than 50 speeches annually on the road, is the real value of it all is the people I get to meet. You are the heart of rural America. It's the families I meet on the dusty trail that are starting businesses, that are seeing problems and creating solutions, that are innovators and creators and connectors, that have hope for the future and are willing to fight for it. They've got fire in their bones, and they've got grit, and they're determined, and they're faith-filled, and they know that this is a life worth fighting for. And so it's brought new meaning to my speeches. When I talk about keeping producers on the land and keeping meat and dairy on the dinner table, it's so much more than making sure there's cows on grass and steak on the dinner plate. Although I'm passionate about that too. It's bigger than that. It's about humanity. It's about moms and dads and grandparents and aunts and uncles and kids and grandkids and neighbors who live across the way, who you see at church and the grocery store and school functions, because it's the people that make up the fabric of this nation. You are the heart of rural America. And we are in election year, which means division politics is in full display, where hate and anger and anxiety and worry and fear drives the news cycles. And I've realized I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of that narrative that politicians and celebrities push, where everything is hopeless, where we are divided, where we are supposed to hate our neighbor, where we are supposed to fear what's to come, where we're supposed to feel like there's nothing we can do because some doofus is in the White House leading this country into a bad direction. And our politicians have forgotten what the Constitution is. They've forgotten the values, the morality of our founding fathers when they wrote the Constitution. And all of that just drives me crazy, because in all of that, although it enrages me and frustrates me to no end, there's no action item. There's never a fix, because I think our political system was designed with no fix in mind. Because when we are divided, we can raise more money. When we are divided, we can keep the talking points on stage without actually solving any problems. I'm tired of politicians giving us lip service and saying all the right things on TV and then doing the exact opposite in their everyday lives and in their policies and in their votes. I'm tired of the media continuing to perpetuate the worry and the fear and the hopelessness that we see permeating through culture. And so, what can we do about it? We have to be the change we want to see. We have to be the solution that we want to see. We have to fight for the future in this country that we want our children and grandchildren to have. And the only way we can do that is by living out those values and ideals with our businesses, with our families, in our communities, with where we spend our dollars, with how we vote. We have to change. We have to be the change makers. And that is the mission and the goal of this podcast, is to prop up and show you people along the way who are doing exactly that. So today on the show, I want to talk to you a little bit, a few things I have on the agenda. But first, I want to talk to you about a day in the heart of rural America and what happened on a recent weekend trip that I made to a speaking event and the stops I made along the way. And at each stop along the way, I met with such amazing people. And I realized as I drove home that night and got into the driveway, pulled into the driveway, and thanked the good Lord for getting me back home to my kids and my husband, once again, safe and sound, what the heart of rural America really is. And so let me tell you about that story. It was a few weekends ago, and I was slated to speak at a private property rights rally in Aberdeen, South Dakota. It was featuring candidates that would be voted on in the South Dakota primary. They're true conservative constitutionalists who believe in freedom and family and faith and protecting private property rights. There was a hog roast prepared by my friend Jared. He spent 3 days prepping this hog and smoking it and getting it ready for this meal. And along the way, I met some amazing people, had some great stops, and I want to tell you about my day. So the day kicked off. I was doing my hair and makeup, getting ready to go to this speech. My husband, When spring starts and gets into early summer and it's garage sale season, my husband grew up going to garage sales with his grandmother. His mom would give him a few dollars to spend, and he would spend these morning hours going to various homes and shopping for treasures. And he has such great memories of doing that with his grandma and picking up some neat finds along the way. And so it's one thing Tyler has just done with the kids. He loads up the kids, gives me some time at home to catch up on things, and the kids go with their dad with a few bucks and they go treasure hunting. And so it was this Saturday morning as I was doing my hair and makeup, getting ready to go to this speech, and my husband took the boys treasure hunting. They came back and oh boy, did they find some treasures. They stopped from house to house. And, along the way, the boys were so excited to tell me, Mom, we saw our music teacher. And Mom, we saw our gym teacher. And Mom, we stopped at our friend's house who was having a garage sale. And so this community kind of comes alive in this small town USA with people bebopping around and trading and bartering for goods, like things used to be done back in the good old days, right? And so they get to this place and they stop and they find the treasure of all treasures. And it was for their mama. And they knew it. They knew I would love it. And I did. It's my favorite gift I've ever received. For $15, the boys bought me this really cool green vintage whiskey jug. I have velvet green curtains in my house and like green accents. And so it goes with all of my decor. And they found me this old whiskey jug, $5 for that. And then they spent another $10 on the most amazing discovery they've ever brought home. It was this wooden cowboy about 2 feet tall, hand carved by an artist called Art McKellips. I probably didn't say the name right, but it's carved on the back. And we immediately had to learn, who is this guy? What is he all about? We Googled him and we find out he's a Native American artist who specializes in pottery, baskets, arrowheads, beadwork, and these wooden carving statues. He has a book out that would teach beginners how to carve wood, and just a really inspiring artist. And so when we Googled him, I thought, well, this is the cutest cowboy I've ever seen. If you follow me on social media, I even asked you guys to help us name this wooden cowboy who just goes perfect with my Western decor in our home. And so a lot of you guys tuned in and gave lots of cool names, but we landed on Gus from Lonesome Dove, and it's very well fitting. I also kind of second place was Baxter in honor of the late and great cowboy poet Baxter Black, one of the first guys to encourage me as a teenager to start my career as a professional public speaker. But that's more on that another day. But so they brought me home this wooden carved statue, and they said the family that was selling it said it was really sentimental to them. It had been their late fathers, and they were just getting rid of some of his things, which is kind of sad in a way. But one man's trash is another man's treasure, and this statue found its way home to our family. And so the boys were especially happy to give it to me because Mother's Day was coming up. And so some of my favorite gifts the kids have ever given me have been dandelions they've picked in the backyard. So this was one of those special things where they were thoughtful and they thought of their mom, and they saw their friends and their teachers while they were bebopping around town. And I had to laugh because as soon as they gave me that wooden cowboy, then they had to show me their treasures. So they found a snowboard, 2 skateboards, and scuba gear. And so they were pretty jacked for the fun they were about to have. And all I could think of was all the broken bones they would probably have with their new adventures on skateboards and snowboards. But we will see. I will report on that back later. But I just had to smile, and I thought, well, this is just such a fun way to start the day. The boys brought me a little gift as an early Mother's Day present, and I gave them a big hug and thanked them. And then it was time for me to load up and head to my speech. So I loaded up my truck. I had my podcast equipment with me in case a sporadic, impromptu interview opportunity arose, and headed north to Aberdeen, getting ready to go speak at the hog roast. And along the way, I swung by Alpena, South Dakota. My friends at 6B Seed and Supplies have a little farm shop right on the place. They sell seed and feed and creep feeders and panels and all kinds of things. But every summer, they do a flower garden or flower shop. And in the winter, they do Christmas tree sales and winter pots and that kind of thing. And so I swung in, and it's on the farm right there on a gravel road, kind of off the beaten path. Swung in, and I was able to pick up all my flowers I needed for the summer right there on that farm. And so I made the transaction, and we had a great chat. Lisa there that owns the place, her and I chatted about, being anxious to get our cow-calf pairs out to pasture and how much rain we've gotten, the normal neighborly things that people talk about. And I was so proud of her. She had expressed to me that this was a tradition that her and her mom had done together, and that her mom had passed in the year before, and she wasn't quite sure if she could do this on her own, but she had friends that were willing to step up and help her work through the season. And so the greenhouse was full of beautiful flowers. She had a smile on her face, and I was just so proud to see an entrepreneur adding value to the family farm by diversifying and bringing new businesses onto the place, and really maximizing the footprint of that family farm. And so I just felt so much pride of my friends, the Bruths at 6B Seed and Supplies. And we loaded up our flowers, and I headed back on the road. So I'm heading up to Aberdeen and getting ready for a hog roast, and head to the Brown County Fairgrounds to go to the event. The speeches were great. The politicians that were running for different seats, they all spoke and talked about their positions. The crowd was packed. There was a full house there for the event, and everyone was excited and sitting on the edge of their seats, lots of clapping through the speeches. And then the hog roast began. And man, then it gets serious. When a hog roast happens and you've got a whole bunch of guys gathered in the back around that smoker, and they're shredding the pork, and they're getting ready, and they're probably eating as much as they're putting in the tray to serve to people. But what made the hog roast even more special, and this doesn't happen very often anymore, but it was basically a bring your own drink, and then also bring a plate or a side dish to share and to pass. And so everybody contributed a little something, and everybody gathered together to talk about issues that were facing our state. One of those issues is an ongoing effort to use eminent domain for private gain. You've heard me talk about it before, but there is a carbon pipeline project that's backed by big money, big power, big politicians with lots of backing, and they're threatening to use eminent domain for private gain. And they're condemning land and forcing their way onto things. And a piece of legislation called SB 201 passed and was signed by our governor, and that essentially brokers a deal and an easement for Summit Carbon Solutions, forcing private landowners to participate in commerce and a Green New Deal energy project that they don't believe in. And SB 201 also strips away local control and the ability for county commissions to plan and route and zone. And they claim that it's because the federal government will come down on us. To which I say, you don't strip away local control and give it to the state in order to protect the people from the federal government. It's kind of like during COVID when the whole nation shut down for our safety and for our own good. And yet the most successful states in the nation left it to each individual county and town to make the best decisions for the communities that they reside in. And so it's a phenomenal power grab and an egregious bill that never should have been signed by our governor. And SB 201, it's worth noting, there's only 4 other states in the nation that have legislation like this. And they're in New York and California and Michigan and Illinois, very blue states with blue Democratic governors. And yet our Republican governor and our Republican legislative body has bought into this Green New Deal and decided that grabbing 45Q tax credits is more important than protecting and preserving the Constitution and our private property rights. And so that was the theme of the event, was to support true constitutional conservative candidates, folks like my friend Mark Lapke, who's been on the show multiple times before, who believe in standing up for the truth and standing up for what is right and not trampling on the neighbor or taking from the neighbor in order to build your own businesses, because that's not what America is. That's not what the heart of America is. That's not what the heart of South Dakota is. And so that was the theme of the night. And man, the place was on fire with enthusiasm and dedication to the cause and to understanding the real serious issue. The fact that our politicians here in South Dakota are selling our land to the highest bidder in order to increase the tax base for economic development, for the future of agriculture. And yet it's anything but that. It's a grift. It's a climate change scam. It's money laundering and reallocation of wealth using our tax dollars. But they'll tell you it's a historic landowner bill of rights. They'll tell you it's good for the people while you continue to have no say on your private property. And yet, that's not the theme of the show, but I mention it because we are on a deadline. We are on a deadline to get 17,500 signatures signed on a petition to put SB 201 on as a referendum on the November ballot in the upcoming election, to let we, the people, veto this horrible, awful bill. So if you're in South Dakota and you feel so inclined and you'd like to sign that petition or help gather petitions, I will send you the information. I will get you connected with a captain in your area, and we'll get you that petition to sign, because this is really taking a grassroots effort, because that's what the heart of America is. It's not out-of-state lawyers. It's not politicians who are willing to grease the palms of their big sponsors and donors. It's grassroots and citizens, and it's the people who say, not here in our home. Don't destroy our community. Don't destroy our families. Don't rip apart our towns and our rural areas. Don't take away our futures. Don't go on land where you're not welcome, because this is not the South Dakota way. This is not the free way. This is not what America is built on. And so that was the theme of the night. And I was so inspired and in awe of the people willing on their own time and their own dime to pour so much into this effort, not being paid, not because there was any political advantage to doing so, often at great risk of their own security and comfort and of being disliked or ostracized from the regime and the power structure that is on that state level. And yet I was so proud, because at every event like this I go to, the crowds get bigger. The resolve gets stronger. The heart of rural America is beating with passion and freedom and purpose and liberty. And it gives me hope. And I'm still smiling, because that hope is in every town across this country that I see with the great people that I get to meet. And so what an amazing event. And the best part is Mark's son, Grady. He's so proud of his dad for running for office. He's running for Senate in District 23. And Grady made a shirt design for his dad. So Grady, thank you for the shirt. I love it so much. I'm so proud of you and for your mom and for your dad standing up for what is right. And I know they are teaching you one day to do the same. So I know you're going to go do big, great things, buddy. And I'm so proud of you. So back to my day. After the event wrapped up, I made one more stop before heading home, and that was in Andover, South Dakota, at the Meat House. There was a gentleman named Justin Morehouse that came to the event, and he said, "Hey, Amanda, I've been listening to your show, I've been following what you do, and I would love for you to see my dream." That's how he described it, my dream. And, I probably shouldn't just say yes to every random stranger that comes up to me that says, like, "Hey, can I show you my meat house after you're done speaking?" And I told Justin, well, it's going to be pretty late. I'm going to speak here tonight, and then I'm going to try to talk to everybody I can and visit with folks. And so it could be late. And he says, "I don't care what hour it is. Just give me a holler when you're heading home, and you can swing by and come see my dream." So finally, about 9:30 p.m., I rolled into the Meat House, the parking lot there. And what I found when I got there was a brand new, under a year old, state-of-the-art USDA inspected meat processing facility that had quickly filled a need in the area. They work for some of our clients at CK6 Heart Angus with their beef program, processing their meats and getting it ready for packaging and selling at the farmers markets up in Aberdeen. And then the Morehouse family also raises Wagyu cattle of their own. And so they're selling their own steaks that they're raising as well. And he told me about building this through COVID, through all the things that were going on, how expensive it was, and the hoops he had to jump through, and getting everything lined up with the USDA. And yet it was impeccable. It was beautiful. It was state of the art, and it was rooted and grounded in faith, in family, and of finding a solution to a problem that exists in rural America. We need more competition, not less, in our beef cattle industry today. We need someone to challenge and step up to the plate so that 85% of our beef supply isn't held captive by four major packers, two that are foreign owned, one especially that's a criminal in their foreign land of Brazil. JBS looking at you, Batista Brothers. We need more diversification in our food supply, not less. We need more farmers and ranchers on the land, not less. And yet, some of the policies that exist out there today, looking at you, mandatory EID in the cattle industry, and there will be an episode on that very soon, that seek to cripple and consolidate and eliminate the small and mid-sized family farms in this country. And if there's one thing I realized during COVID is that our nation relies to be secure and strong, we need a strong and secure food supply. And our nation's food supply is not too big to fail, as we saw during COVID when ships were not unloading things on the port, when trucks were not able to run into big cities, when packing plants were closing down or slowing down their lines, leaving hogs to be euthanized in piles, shelves to be bare, and people to be panic buying and hoarding toilet paper because for the first time they were seeing that things weren't always available and ready for them. So what is the solution? The solution is in the heart of rural America, with competition, with a free and fair market, and with more families finding ways to diversify, to get closer to that consumer retail dollar, and to build businesses and to create pathways to profitabilities for themselves, to employ people in the community, to keep good talent at home, and to create opportunities for the next generation. Because that is our biggest problem, you guys. We have outsourced our best talent. We have emptied our main streets in favor of shopping at Walmart and Amazon and Shein. And yet, if we want to be the change we want to see, we have to shop our values. We have to shop where we want things to see. We have to encourage our young people to start businesses in rural America. And the reason I'm so fired up about this today is simple. Because I read an article in The Atlantic, and it said the title of the article is How Rural America is Stealing Our Girls' Futures. I'll read that again. How Rural America is Stealing Our Girls' Futures. Here's an excerpt from the article. Death in a Dying Town. The county's median household income in 2021 was $40,763. Almost everyone goes to an evangelical church, and in the halls of the town's only high school, everyone knows everything about everyone else, or seems to. Whom you dated, where you bought your clothes, how you acted on the weekend, and even your destiny, inherited from the generations that came before you. The overall theme of the article was that there was no hope for young women in small rural towns. Gossip, poverty, hopelessness, no jobs. Your future set in stone based on your limited friend options and previous generations' habits and wealth. The article was clear. Run, young people, run as fast as you can to the nearest big city and urban center. There, you'll find careers that pay well. You'll find arts and music and museums and a culture of success. Yet, how divisive the article reads, especially in an election year. If they can't divide us by race or religion or party line, they'll try to divide us by economic status and rural versus urban America. And the take home message is this: folks in rural America are poor and dumb. They have no future. The city's sophisticated and fast paced populations are far above the slow and meager country mice that we are. Give me a break. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe expanding your outlook on life by traveling and exploring new places across the country and the world is a great thing. However, one of the greatest mistakes we make is outsourcing our best talent, telling them there's no future at home, and encouraging them and not encouraging them to come back home and start businesses and raise their families. I'll tell you a story. When I was in college, my parents said, Amanda, go see the world. Do anything but be involved in the cattle business. It's too hard of work. It's too risky. You're better than this. You're more talented than this. Go do something else. So I did. In college, I had sights set on political life. I was a political science major, and my first internship out of college was in Washington, D.C. Later, I would go on to live in Denver and Minneapolis and even Argentina. I was bilingual, at least at one time, very fluent in Spanish, although I wouldn't know a lick of it today. Although I would hope if I got dropped into a foreign country where I would need to speak Spanish, it would come back to me quickly. It's in this noggin somewhere. I studied plenty for it. But anyway, I lived in all these wonderful places, and I treasure the memories and the friendships and the insights gained and the network that I grew. And I know that each experience played a role in the stepping stones of my career and my future. Yet, when it came time to get married, have children, start businesses of my own, the concrete jungle of the urban metropolises didn't hold a candle for me to what awaited me back home. I remember distinctly being in Washington, D.C., and just trying to appreciate each day the opportunity to live in the world's most powerful city with all these monuments and the history and the things I could read and learn about and explore. And yet, when I'd look up in the sky at night, I couldn't see the stars because of the city lights. And I remember thinking, this is not a life for me. I remember thinking my feet were constantly on concrete, that I needed grass and cows and wide open spaces. And I knew I needed to go home. Now, nowhere in the Atlantic article did it mention the hopelessness and depression and loneliness and despair that so many of our nation's youth face. Quite frankly, we've abandoned Christ. We've left the church. There is no hope or no purpose in life without hope in eternity and salvation. So nowhere in the article did it mention the lack of work ethic or the entire entitlement being bred into our society. Nowhere did it mention the fact that we're addicted to our cell phones and our tablets. Nowhere did it mention the rising divorce rates and the broken homes and the children being shuffled between parents. That can be found in rural and urban places alike. It's sad, and it does feel hopeless to see that. And yet, the solution is really simple. And that's what highlights what the heart of rural America is. The solution can absolutely be found in small rural towns, and it doesn't have to come at the sacrifice of economic career opportunities. With high speed internet access and the ability to connect with mentors and businesses and customers and entrepreneurial ideas that aren't just limited to your small town where you grow up in, the sky is absolutely the limit of what you can achieve, the money that you can make, the businesses that you can build, the connections that you can have, the network that you can have. Some of my best friends, colleagues, connections, and business advisors can be found in every state of the union. And at the same time, I am able to raise my four children in a loving home, in a happy marriage, in a quiet rural setting, in a school where the teachers and parents know our family, with grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins close by, and a community of friends who have known us for generations, who at the drop of the hat would come help us in a crisis, no matter what. So, to the Atlantic, shame on you for your divisive, skewed, and agenda driven article. Shame on you for perpetuating the notion that there is no hope in these flyover states. I reject your stereotype because I am that girl in rural America who dreamed big and saw the world and explored a lot and asked a lot of questions and grabbed as much experience as I possibly could, but who at the heart of it all knew that she had a village of support, of community, of people who really genuinely cared waiting for her back home. And I can't imagine a better place or a better setting than to raise my children than on the farm and ranch, where hard work is just part of what we do, where there's a church on every corner, and there's people who will do anything if you call and say, I need help. To further highlight what the heart of rural America is, last week there was a carbon pipeline meeting in the small school in Artesian, South Dakota. I was nervous. I was nervous to know what my neighbors thought. I was nervous to know if there would be any support or if I'd be met with apathy and like people didn't care. And yet, it was filled. It was filled, jam packed with people, with my neighbors, with people I've known my entire life who see the threats that exist to our way of life and who aren't trusting and counting on politicians to fix it. No, they're going to get involved and they're going to fix it themselves. They're going to protect their own. They're going to protect their community. They're going to protect their neighbors. And they're going to fight for a future where we are free in the United States of America, where our children and grandchildren can dream. They can build businesses. They can enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they did it because in the heart of rural America, we understand some fundamental truths. That if we do not control the land beneath our feet, we are not free. If we do not pray to our loving God and have hope in eternity, then there's no purpose on this earth. And if we do not instill these values into our children and grandchildren, then there's not much of a future at all. So if any of this resonated with you, my friends, I sure appreciate you listening to today's episode. If you'd like some more solo rants and soapboxes from me in the future, let me know. Give me a topic and we'll talk about it. And maybe I'll have to do this more in the future, but only if I hear from you. Or if you hate it, let me know too. Say, bring back the guests. And I've got some great guests coming up that you're not going to want to miss. But for now, I just want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for tuning into the heart of rural America, for truly understanding what my mission and intention is with this show, and that it's much bigger than just a podcast and a radio show. It is a movement. It is a mission. It requires action and passion and purpose. And it all requires you. It requires you to link arms alongside me and fight for this future we want to see, to be the solution we want to be, and to remember if it is to be, it is up to me. Thank you so much. God bless you all, and I hope to see you all on the Dusty Trail. I'm Amanda Radke. Until next time, take care.